Hi, everybody. I'm Jean Chatzky. Welcome to Your Money Map, sponsored by the Alliance for Lifetime Income. I am really excited about today's show. I feel like it is one that we have been dancing around for a very long time, that we've been digging into, nibbling around the edges. But today we are going to get to the heart of the matter. And the matter is finding a financial advisor you can trust, finding a financial advisor whose skill set and expertise and price tag lines up with what you need in your life. And we're going to do it with Pam Krueger. Pam Krueger, I know many of you are familiar with. She is the executive producer and the co-host of the Money Track series on PBS. She's been in this industry for more than 2 decades, and she's earned recognition and admiration as an investor advocate and educator. She helps us all get smarter about our money. And over the past few years, she has started a new company. It's called WealthRamp, and it's a matching service for financial advisors. If you are looking for a financial advisor, Pam has scoured the country. She has vetted thousands of advisors in order to come up with several hundred that she is willing to recommend, and she is making matches successfully. Pam, welcome to the program. So glad to have you along with me today.
It's great to be back with you. Thanks.
Tell me about WealthRamp. You decided that you were going to go in this direction, I know, a few years ago after a lot of thought and a lot of debating with yourself about the need for this in the world.
That's right. I mean, the backstory is that the reality is I was hosting Money Track, producing Money Track, helping people save, invest, and really think through all the digital tools and basically all the things that they can do to make their financial lives better and become more confident and comfortable. And it was our viewers, just like with you, who came to me and said, Pam, I've really decided I want a financial advisor, but you don't seem very high on financial advisors. And the fact is that I really wasn't. I was always trying to tell people to be skeptical and be wary and be very thoughtful and careful about choosing an advisor, because it's a decision that has a lot of consequences. So you could say that I came to WealthRamp and created it kicking and screaming. Now I'm in love with it. I'm in love with it. But like you said, it took me the better part of 3 years to go out and screen the advisors and hand select and then create a constellation of different advisors with different expertise to help different people at different stages in their lives.
I know that when I go out and give a talk, and this happened to me just yesterday. I'm out in the on the West Coast. I'm actually in Tacoma, Washington. Every time I give a talk, I can count on getting asked 3 questions. One about long-term care insurance, one about raising children who are smart about money, and one about how do you find a financial advisor that you can trust. How did you hone your process? And before you answer the question, let me just remind everybody who's watching on Facebook, watching on LinkedIn, this is your show. This is your conversation. And this episode, more than any others, my guess is you've got questions. This woman has answers. So type them in the chat. I will bring them into the conversation. Let us know where you are in the country, where you are in the world, where you're watching from. We would love to have your participation. All right. So Pam, when you get asked that question, how do you find a financial advisor who works for you? Where do you begin?
Well, first of all, just to take a step back in how, when people say, when I always tell people, I vet rigorously, and people, the automatic response is like, what does that really mean? But the reality is that when you think about, advisors who are out there, who are independent and, you don't know who they are each individually, right? Because the industry tends to paint advisors with one brush. It almost makes you feel like just go to an advisor, as though that advisor is one persona. And at the same time, going out and finding advisors and vetting them means going out into the woods where all the trees look the same. They
Mm.
look identical. And you have to go up to every single tree, and, like, look at the bark and analyze. And that's why it takes so long. And that's why very few people really want to do it or can do it. But I've been in the industry since I was 24 years old, and I know what I'm looking for. So what I am thinking about as an individual who's going and looking for an advisor, and what I want, at the end of the day, we all want the same thing. I do, you do, we all do. Peace of mind.
Yeah.
We want to know that we can collaborate with someone who, A, we can certainly trust and rely on, but have conversations with that make us comfortable, that we have a plan and that we actually have a strategy that we can stick to. Because at the end of the day, sticking to a good strategy that's dynamic is where it's at. That's what succeeds. And to get there, not everybody feels they need an advisor, because they don't. There's a lot of digital tools online, a lot of practically free things that people can tap into, but there's a lot more people, I've learned, who do want help. At some point in their life, they want to tap into and collaborate with an advisor.
So you teed up a whole bunch of what I would call proof points in that last paragraph. And let's unpack them a little bit. First of all, who does and who doesn't need an advisor? And is there any sort of an in-between there?
I think I somehow have earned the reputation of becoming the engineer's advisor, because I get so many people who come to me who have been in the category of what I will say are do-it-yourselfers, okay? That you know who you are. These are the people who like spreadsheets and enjoy the process of, financial planning and looking at the investments and all the analysis and all the detail. And my brother is a perfect example of that engineer. He was the guy who, I don't need an advisor and I never will. And you know what? He didn't and he never did. But along that continuum, away from do it yourself, here's what happens. Even the people who have been doing it themselves for years sometimes arrive at a point where life has become more layered and more complex. You're married. Maybe it's a
Mhm.
second marriage. You've got kids. Guess what? You have a spouse or a partner who matters, and their voice and their concerns need to be factored in. So while you might be the spreadsheet person and the do-it-yourselfer, you may have a spouse, or you may be the spouse or the partner who says, no, I don't want to do it ourselves. I want fresh eyes. I want to know that we're collaborating and not drinking our own Kool-Aid. So verification is really the first point. It's sometimes something will happen in somebody's life and there'll be an event, something happens, and it will make
Well,
you feel you need help.
right now, I think the economy and the market represent that event, right? I mean, right now, for many people, we've got inflation like we haven't seen in 40 years. We've got interest rates that are going up faster than we expected. We've got incredible volatility in the market. And I think even some do it yourselfers are feeling like, oh, do I need a second opinion
Yeah.
at this point?
Right. Yep. It's a catalyst. I mean, sometimes things that happen that are outside our control. Clearly, economic and business cycles are outside our control. The stock market's ups and downs are outside our control. So that will be a catalyst. And then other times it's things that happen in our own lives that come up suddenly. Somebody gets ill, perhaps somebody passes away. Something has changed where all of a sudden something that's happening in your own personal life makes you feel that you want to hit that call for help button. And that's the point where everybody says, okay, well, I know there's this quintessential financial advisor out there. And then all of a sudden it's like your mind blows up, because you're like, well, what does that mean? Do I randomly walk into, a brokerage firm or and just get who I get? Do I ask a friend? And do I assume that my friend has done her homework or his homework? Or do I go online and go into one of those scary lead generation websites where you put your number in and they immediately turn around and your phone starts ringing off the hook with unwanted solicitations? These are not very good choices for 2022. You know,
Right.
we could do better.
So let's talk about how we do better, whether we are using a service like WealthRamp to connect us with an advisor or whether we're doing our own homework. What are the important factors that go into a reputable, trustworthy financial advisor who lines up with your needs as an individual? How do you, I know that you've got a menu of of different boxes that have to be checked before you will
Yeah,
recommend somebody, before they
yeah.
can even be a part of your database. So can you take us through the most important of those? Like, what do you look for? Is it a certain level of experience? Is it a certain license? Is it a certain degree of empathy?
Yes, yes, and yes. You can say I'm a jerk about advisors. You can say that because I am putting my name and I'm being accountable for being a gatekeeper. So teaching people how to fish and teaching people what to look for is my joy. So it starts with the top level of veneer. I want to look at the background checks. Look, they're public. Everybody can see them. They're SEC records and brokers. Just go to brokercheck.com, pop in the advisor's name or the broker's name. If you're talking about a brokerage firm, or even if you're not, it'll pull up the background records of all the independent and brokerage firm advisors across the country, of which, by the way, there's like 500,000. So we're talking about a huge number. Your first skimming is you want to look and make sure that you're reading their background records. And what are you looking for there? What am I looking for? I'm looking for taking a yellow highlighter and looking for any disclosures, which means these are complaints. I want to see where this person has been. How long have they been employed there? Do they job hop? If so, are there good reasons? I want to get the backstory of this person's history. I want to see how long they've been in business.
How long should they have been in business?
Well, for me, Gene, I'm not going to have even a financial planner involved in my network unless they've been established for at least 5 years. Even as a planner, the more complex and the more wealth management, and investment portfolio management expertise comes in, they need to have longer, they need deep experience. They need to have been established. And once I look at those background records, that's going to tell me if they're really truly what's known as a fiduciary, which is just a fancy way of saying that they are legally held to a standard that requires them to put your best financial interest ahead of their own. So it rules out a lot of advisors who can't put that in writing. So now we've just screened out a lot of advisors, but that's only the beginning of the vetting. Now you want to look at the firm. You want to look at credentials matter. Credentials do matter. Education does matter. But some credentials matter a lot more than others. They're not all equally weighted. You can have an advisor who has an alphabet soup
Yes.
behind the name, and you keep going and going and going. But at the end of the day, the credentials, 7 out of 8 of them are meaningless almost.
So which ones do you look for? Which
Well,
ones
as a
do you find
base,
the most meaningful?
yeah, as a baseline for me, I want to see that they are CFP, which is Certified Financial Planner, or that they have the body of work that exceeds that baseline. So you could have a CPA or what's called a Chartered Financial Analyst, which is a CFA, which that body of work and the rigor that goes into studying for those exams is so much greater than the CFP that you don't need to have the CFP because you've already done 10 levels of CFP.
It's
So
so true.
I can look at these credentials and tell you this one matters, this one doesn't. And then once you're looking at that, you're getting increasingly a better picture is starting to form. You're getting more clarity. And then once you're down to looking at the firm and the website, and you're getting a sense of the culture. Now, of course, I interview the advisors, every advisor, me. I don't let anybody else do the interview. That's what I mean by I'm a jerk. I'm a gatekeeper.
I think jerk and gatekeeper are not synonymous. And
Well, I'm a
no, I
bad.
think this is your business, right? This is what you have decided is
Yeah.
your mission, and for you to be this gatekeeper is providing a really important service. So I don't agree that it makes you a jerk.
Thanks. I just think that, I kind of say that tongue in cheek as though I'm a toughie. I'm a toughie because at the end of the day, I just want people to feel so comfortable that they've got the right advisor. So carrying on with the kinds of questions to ask, you want to know that the advisor has clients that are like you. So if I'm a mom and I have a child on the autism spectrum, I can't just go to a general advisor, even if that advisor is a fiduciary and really squeaky clean and great, because I need an advisor who has special needs, trusts, experience specifically. Or if I work at a startup, I might have restricted stock units. I might have incentive stock options, very complex tax planning. You could make one mistake and screw up so badly. So this is why when you get down to the granular level of matching one-on-one, you want to know what kinds of clients do you have. So I always tell people, ask the question, describe for me who are your typical clients, advisor, and describe what you're doing for them. Because
Mm,
I'm paying you a fee and I want to know what I'm getting for the fee. Now, when you force them to draw a picture of what they are doing for their clients and that you happen to fit that type of client, now you're able to envision why there could be a connection. And then your next follow-on question needs to be right off of that. So tell me about your fees.
right.
How
And
do you charge your fees? What are your fee arrangements?
what is typical these days in terms of fee arrangements? And Roz asked a great question right off the bat. She said, what services should we expect from an advisor who we're paying 1% of assets under management?
Yay, great question. Thank you. Okay, expect a lot. Set your sights and your expectations high and don't settle and don't lower them. And what does that look like? It's a collaboration. It's you having an advisor who's responsive, who has done the thorough understanding of you and your family and your needs and your weaknesses and your strengths. It's an advisor who does not ever talk down to you
Mm,
and make you feel like, I'm going to let you bask in the glow of my knowledge. No, thank you. I'm looking for an advisor who is going to enjoy teaching me, because part of this secret of getting the 1% out of it is use that advisor as a teacher. And you're not going to sit down and take, hour-long, sessions that you're expected to absorb. But what will happen, and you don't even know that it's happening, is that if you're doing this correctly over the course of time with the right advisor who's sharing knowledge with you, those are little breadcrumbs of knowledge, and you won't recognize yourself in 5 years, because it leads to a path of confidence, because you will pick up so much and your conversations will become so much more sophisticated. You won't recognize yourself in 5 years.
I totally agree with you. I always find myself, I've had the same advisor now for a long time, and I always find myself, I read an interesting article in the Wall Street Journal or the New York Times or the Washington Post, and I'll send it to my advisor. What do you think about this? Should we be doing this? What's your take on this? And that back and forth
Fun.
tends to make you smarter. It tends to make you more knowledgeable and more able to understand what's going on in the economy, but also what's going on in your own life. Suzanne asks, can you talk about advisors at big firms like a Morgan Stanley, Raymond James, who are not allowed to be a fiduciary but have a CFP? Do they meet your criteria?
No, no. And the reason is, look, I used to do that for a living. I manage 60 brokers for a living. These are nice people. CFPs, really, really good at what they do. Gene, the problem isn't the person, it's the business model. The business model that they're working under is restricting them from being able to be completely independent. Because think about it, they have to work for the brokerage firm. They have to work for Morgan Stanley. They can't work directly for you. I would prefer that you have an advisor who works only and directly for you as your advocate. And then there's nobody in between, and they don't have any conflicts of, being restricted by what the firm wants them to do. And so my problem is not with the advisors, it's with the business model.
Okay. I have heard a lot of talk lately about a quote unquote holistic financial advisor. What is that? And is that the kind of thing, the kind of person that we should be looking for?
It's the only person you can look for. Because if I'm going to be expected to have a real collaboration with an advisor from whom I'm going to learn, I'm going to get confident, I'm going to build a plan, I'm going to discuss and co-develop an investment strategy. If I'm going to do all that, then they need to be holistic, which means I need the advisor to spend time understanding my real estate, my parents. They may be cognitively impaired. I may have to get involved with my parents financially at some point. My kids, their college, I need the advisor to take the whole pizza, not just a slice here and a slice there. And then what? You're going to get advice that's totally out of context. It'd be like going to a doctor and the doctor saying, you said you had a headache, so here, let me just treat the headache, and doesn't even look at what could possibly be related to the headache that's causing the headache. It can't be done any other way.
So how do we find those advisors? If what you're saying is we need a specific type of advisor with a particular license and a skill set and in business for 5 years. And by the way, they should be willing to dig into my whole financial life, not just my investments, but my taxes and my charitable giving, and maybe have a call with my accountant from time to time. How do I find these people? Where are they?
Well, unless there's one source, which I have, worked my butt off for the past 5 years to pull together to make happen. And the only reason I'm doing this is because it didn't exist. It just didn't exist. You can go to different sources and you can pull from NAPFAR, you can pull from the CFP site, you can pull from, a lot of different sources, the Alliance, wherever it is where you have sources, and then you have to do the homework yourself. And I can give you the homework to do, which means those levels of screening. And, you get to the end of that and you're going to be stronger for it because you've done it. But Wealth Ramp is the network where it doesn't matter where you are in life and where you are with your money. You can come to me and you can know that, number one, it's private. I am not going to allow any advisors to see the information when people come to Wealth Ramp. I'm not going to share it. They don't have access to it because I don't share it with them, let alone sell it. It's totally up to you to come in and be able to see the advisors, research them, and go from there. So I'm just one resource, but in terms of pulling together this kind of advisor network, this is why I did it, because it didn't exist.
Thomas says, I want someone I can pay a fee to look at my overall financial situation and make recommendations without them trying to sell me something or turn my money over to them. We started down this road, Pam, of a conversation about fees, about what's normal. He's asking, what is a ballpark flat rate or hourly rate if I do find a person like that?
Okay, so two things. If it's a one-off situation, which I do really strongly recommend if you're early in your career and your life is super simple and you don't have a lot of complication, a one-off is like great. It's like a checkup. Mm-hmm. And for that, you're going to pay an hourly rate. So that could be anywhere from, depending on how deep they go, that could be something that you just pay a few $100s for and you walk out the door. But here's what I don't like about that. If you are feeling like you want an advisor relationship, like a collaboration, and you're looking for ongoing, and you don't want your money managed, and you don't want to pay an assets under management fee, you don't have to. You can pay a retainer fee for ongoing. Now, when life gets more complicated and we get further along in our careers, that's the time, especially getting closer to retirement, when you do probably want to engage on an ongoing basis, because life is going to change. The economy is going to change, and you're going to change. So you want all these changes to be adjusted for in your plan. You don't want a stale old plan, like stale bread from 3 years ago. Then you're going to look at it and it's going to be wrong. So the price that you pay for that kind of relationship, where your money's in your 401k and that advisor's not managing your money, is still, all roads lead to the same number. It's still going to equate to about 1%. It could be less, because if your situation isn't complicated, it should be less than that. So if you're talking about a $500,000 portfolio, but I don't want you to manage my money, advisor, that's just how much money I have in my 401k saved. I want financial planning ongoing, probably somewhere between, could be anywhere between 2,500 to 7,500 a year. And guess what? It all comes down to one formula, no matter how they charge: time and complexity. Now, that's for advisors who charge fees. These are not commission advisors. They don't sell a damn things, and they're not going to have any reason to sell you anything, because they're not selling anything.
With the hourly fee, with that simpler model that you talked about a couple of minutes ago, where somebody does just go in for a checkup, what's the range on hourly fees that you're seeing these days? And what can I expect at that sort of a checkup? I mean, I know if I go to my doctor for a physical, I'm going to get an EKG, I'm going to get my blood pressure, they're going to make me step on the scale even though I don't want to, they're going to give me a flu shot, right? I know what to expect. What do I expect at this meeting?
Yeah, what you should expect is you should have like a good, you should not feel rushed, like, oh my God, I'm on the clock, I don't want to talk too much. There's a good hour or two that the advisor's just going to want to talk and get to know you. And then the advisor's going to ask you, I do want to have access to look at everything. They want to look at what you're paying in fees for your investments. They want to look at your 401k. They want to look under the hood. So they want to look at everything and assess everything, just like a physical. And then put your clothes back on. Okay, sit down. And then it's a talk through about, okay, you said you were thinking about buying a piece of real estate next year. Now, your cash flow over here doesn't align with that until 2025, and here's why. And so those are the kinds of questions you're looking to get answered in that session. So that session, depending upon the depth, the breadth, the time, and the complexity. I mean, it could range from anything, just a few $100s, but it could also be, $1,500 if it's truly, like, what if it involves estate planning?
Right.
So it just depends. So think of it as time and complexity, but think of it as roughly equated on an ongoing basis to that 1%, even if they're not managing the money, that it still comes out to about 1%.
Rachel writes that she's seen some people get frustrated that they don't meet the advisor's minimum for investing, but they still need help. Any suggestions?
Yeah, huge pet peeve of mine, which is why when I'm aligning and I'm creating a match, when you come into Wealth Ramp and I have you flow through the questions, that's one of the questions, because I want to help you avoid awkward conversations. There's nothing more awkward than meeting an advisor and you're kind of like, I really like this advisor. And then, yeah, and I've got 350,000. Oh, I'm sorry. And the reason they do that isn't because they're trying to be snotty, at least the advisors in my network. They want to limit the number of clients, and they want to be able to spend time with each client. So that's why it's important to ask that question right up front. If you're not going through me and you didn't get matched, because you're not going to get matched to an advisor who doesn't work with people at that level, because that's part of the matching. But if you're out on your own looking at advisors, that's one of the first questions you want to ask.
And is there a way to target advisors if you're looking on your own who don't have such high minimums?
You just have to look at each one.
Okay.
And you know what? They're changing all the time too. I mean, for me, it's like a moving target. I'll have advisors that have a minimum client assets of 250,000, and then a year from now, that's changed. And they might
One
have
of
moved over, changed it.
once you find an advisor and once you have a relationship that's ongoing, we all have to deal with the hurdles that come our way. And one of the biggest hurdles is longevity. The fact that longevity is a really,
Yeah.
if not, it's probably the biggest risk for any retiree. And we have gotten, with the help of our advisors, pretty good at accumulating assets, at focusing on the saving and growing the money part. But when it comes to making the money last, that is a challenge that I don't think we've quite cleared the hurdle yet. The Alliance, we talk a lot about annuities on this show as one of the tools that you can use to make your money last. When you're looking for advisors, some of them sell annuities, some of them don't sell annuities. How do you know if you are finding yourself an advisor who's good on the topic of guaranteed lifetime income, and how important is that?
That is the topic. Guaranteed lifetime income is the topic, and longevity is the biggest risk to our retirement. It's not the stock market. It's living too long. So with that said, every advisor in my network that's part of my vetting, Jean, they're all experts in retirement, guaranteed retirement income. They're all experts in annuities. They're not going to say, I do or I do not. They don't sell annuities because they don't get commission. But that doesn't mean that they're not going to advise you and say, this is a tool, this is an annuity. It's just a tool. For you, it's a tool that could work. Here's how I evaluate that. And I would rather get an evaluation from an advisor who doesn't sell than the person who's selling. So the advisors can give you, they have to be experts in insurance. They have to be experts in guaranteed income and annuities. They have to be able to understand how to use the tool, when it's appropriate, when it isn't, and looking at dynamic retirement planning, which includes spending down assets into retirement. These all come hand in hand with the expertise. And when people are getting close to that point of retiring, Jean, that's the number one question that we get from people who come to us is, how do I make sure I'm not going to outlive my money? And, are annuities either the devil or are they the best things in sliced bread? Well, they're neither. They're just a tool. And sometimes they're perfect. And sometimes they may not be. So you want to work with an advisor who looks at it very objectively, but is an expert
And
in
looks,
annuities and insurance.
and looks at all the tools, right?
Oh,
And has the ability to evaluate all the tools, or at least all the tools that are important to you, because as you said earlier, different people have different needs in their lives, right? If you're going through a divorce, you have a separate set of needs. If you are taking care of an older parent who needs support, you have a separate set of needs. If you have a special needs child, you have a separate set of needs. It's a very confusing landscape. Do you see the landscape getting any simpler at any point in the near future?
I wanted to be somehow simplified and streamlined 10 years ago. And, that's part of the reason I stepped out onto a branch or a limb and said, I'm going to do this, because it's not. And people are running around and asking the question, and there's no answers out there. It's just a confusing jumble. It's almost like the old world of Wall Street and the way it worked, which made sense 80 years ago, collides with the world we live in today, with financial wellness and what we really need, and longevity and guaranteed lifetime income and all these needs we have. And it's almost like these things collide. It's just it's a big mess. So it's hard to find your way through. So don't think that you're the problem, or that you're somehow deficient because you're having a hard time stumbling around in the forest and all the trees look the same. All the trees look identical. Trust me. I have to go up and look at every single tree.
Cheryl follows up and she asks, when is an annuity a great choice? And from my perspective, Cheryl, I like the idea of using an annuity to cover what I know will be my fixed costs in retirement. Social Security is part of that. Social Security is an annuity. In fact, it's a
Right.
really good annuity because it's an annuity that has inflation protection built in. The folks who are on Social Security are getting a nice inflation bump this year. But in terms of other scenarios, Pam, are there other times when you like the idea?
I think it gets back to exactly what you said a few minutes ago about everybody's needs are very, very specific. So think of this not as a pen. Let's pretend this is an oyster shucker, okay? And I'm not going to set the table every evening at my house and put an oyster shucker there at every setting. But when I want oysters, I don't want to use a fork or a spoon or a knife. I need an oyster shucker. So it fills a very specific need in a myriad of different examples in different ways. And people who don't have pensions anymore, which most of us don't, it can be a great way to, an annuity can be a tool that can be a great way, to create that retirement income security that you're craving. Is it the answer to everything, or is it the only thing you should do? It's all about the right combination
Yeah.
of different tools that you're using to really tune your situation. And the more you really understand that, and the more you work with an advisor who understands you holistically, the more you're going to gain. The only thing that matters, and the only reason we're having this conversation today for any of us, is that peace of mind and confidence that, hey, you know what? I have a plan and I actually have confidence in it. And I have a strategy and I actually understand it. So therefore, I'm going to stick with it.
Yep.
And maybe what's in that plan is different. Mine is different than Jean's. Mine's going to be different than yours. But there's a lot of tools out there, and it's a question of the right combination.
All right. So we've covered a lot of territory in the last 40 minutes.
All over.
Let's wrap it up with a top three, right? For somebody right now who is watching, is listening, is looking for an advisor, top three things that they need to do in order to get this right.
This is easy. Number one, and not in this order necessarily. Number one, though, transparency. If you're asking your advisor about fees and your advisor says, oh, no, we don't charge you anything for that, run, don't walk, run. They don't build the big buildings in New York because they're not charging you fees. So they do charge fees, but you need to understand every one of it and see it in writing. You want an advisor who's completely fee transparent and transparent in every way. Fiduciary is part of that. Number two, holistic. We just covered why. Can't just have a slice of the pizza, need to see the whole thing. And number three is, just making sure that what your attributes are that you want to solve for are fit for this really qualified advisor who you've fallen in love with. Make sure that the minimum, make sure that they have the skill set that aligns with what you really need. And those things will really help to get you thinking the right way. And the right way is take your time. No one's going to rush you. This is very thoughtful. Just take your time.
If people who are watching and listening, and thank you guys for your comments, really added to the conversation. If people who are watching and listening want more from you and more from Wealth Ramp, where do they go?
It's wealthramp.com. And when you get there, the first thing that will happen is you'll just fill out some questions that I'm asking you, again, privately. You flow through. I'm going to show you the three advisors who are the best fit based on what you told me. And I'm right there. If you have any questions, you want to reach me, I talk to people. As a matter of fact, I'm talking to somebody right after we get off this Facebook Live all the time. So that's the best way, wealthramp.com.
And it's free.
And it's free.
Okay. That's important because I think people, want to know, how much is this going to cost me?
I also think that people need to know how I get paid. I get paid after a relationship with that advisor that you have chosen. Not only do you sign on with that advisor, but that advisor has gelled. So usually I get a referral fee 3 months, sometimes 4 months after the relationship has gelled. And then those advisors report back to me, and I think that they should be paying me a referral fee, and that's how I get paid.
Fantastic. And if you're looking for more information from the Alliance, specifically on this show, you can get it at our website. It's protectedincome.org/ the right financial professional. And there are dashes, hyphens in between each word. So it's the dash right dash financial dash professional dash, and I might be mixing up the syntax of hyphens and dashes, but we're going to put it up on your screen so that you get it right. Pam, thank you so much. Always a pleasure to talk to you, to see you. This is what you're creating, and what you've created is really amazing. So congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Jean.
All right. Bye, everybody. We'll see you next time.
Bye.